Elena Carter pushed the heavy cleaning cart down the dimly lit hallway of Ridgewood Community College. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, casting a pale glow over the polished floors. It was nearly midnight, and the campus had emptied out hours ago. Most students were either asleep in their dorms or out enjoying the nightlife of the nearby town. But Elena preferred the quiet solitude of her late-night shift. There was something peaceful about being alone in the sprawling building, with only the sound of her mop swishing against the floor to keep her company. She wasn't much for conversation anyway. Over the 2 years she'd worked as a janitor at the college, Elena had learned to blend into the background. She wore plain uniforms, dark blue pants and a gray shirt, and kept her curly black hair tied back in a tight bun. Her brown eyes rarely lingered on anyone for too long, and when spoken to, she answered politely but briefly. To most people, she was just another faceless employee, someone who cleaned up after them without complaint. And that was exactly how she liked it. But tonight felt different. As Elena moved from one hallway to the next, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She paused mid-mop, glancing over her shoulder. The corridor stretched empty behind her, lined with closed classroom doors. Shaking her head, she told herself it was nothing. Maybe it was just the long hours catching up to her. Still, she quickened her pace, focusing on finishing her rounds before heading home. Unbeknownst to Elena, a group of 4 students loitered near the gymnasium entrance. Jason Cole, the self-proclaimed leader of the pack, leaned casually against the wall while his friends stood close by. Ryan Hicks, tall and lanky, cracked jokes under his breath, earning snickers from Megan Lewis and Chloe Bennett. They were all seniors popular within their social circle and notorious for their antics around campus. Whether it was pranking freshmen or skipping class, they thrived on causing trouble. Tonight, however, their attention had shifted to Elena. Jason nudged Ryan with his elbow, nodding toward the janitor as she disappeared around the corner. "Look at her," he said, smirking. "Doesn't she ever stop working?" Megan rolled her eyes dramatically. "Probably thinks she's better than us because she actually shows up here every night." "Yeah, right," Chloe chimed in, giggling. "Like mopping floors is some kind of accomplishment." Jason straightened up, his smirk widening into a grin. "You know what? Let's go say hi. I bet she loves getting attention from college. Royalty like us." The others laughed, following him as he sauntered down the hall. None of them knew, or cared, that Elena was more than just a janitor. None of them realized that beneath her quiet exterior lay a past filled with danger, discipline, and skill far beyond anything they could imagine. All they saw was an easy target, someone they could mock without consequence. When they caught up to her, Jason called out loudly, his voice echoing off the walls. "Hey, you. Yeah, the lady with the mop." Elena froze, her grip tightening on the handle. She turned slowly, meeting his gaze with a neutral expression. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone calm and measured. Jason raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by her politeness. "Nah, not really. Just wondering if you ever take a break. You've been dragging that thing around all night." His friends chuckled behind him, egging him on. Elena didn't respond immediately. Instead, she studied him carefully, noting the cocky tilt of his head and the way his hands rested casually in his pockets. He reminded her of someone she used to deal with regularly back in her old life. But she pushed the thought aside. That part of her existence was supposed to be over now. "I'm just doing my job," she said finally, keeping her voice steady. "If there's nothing else, I'll get back to it." "Oh, come on," Jason pressed, taking a step closer. "Don't be like that. We're just trying to have a little fun." Ryan snickered beside him. "Yeah, maybe she needs to loosen up." Elena sighed inwardly, recognizing the signs of escalating behavior. She'd seen it countless times before. Young men fueled by arrogance and boredom, looking for someone weaker to assert their dominance over. Normally, she would walk away, letting their insults slide off her like water. But tonight, something about their presence grated on her nerves. Perhaps it was the way they blocked her path, forcing her to stand still. Or maybe it was the dismissive way they spoke to her, as though she were invisible. Whatever the reason, Elena found herself hesitating. For a brief moment, memories surfaced, flashes of crowded arenas, bright lights, and roaring crowds. Back then, she hadn't been Elena Carter, mild-mannered janitor. She'd been someone else entirely. Someone feared and respected. Someone who wouldn't tolerate disrespect from anyone, let alone a group of entitled college kids. But that was the past. This was now. And Elena had promised herself she would leave that life behind forever. So instead of reacting, she simply nodded. "All right," she said softly. "Have your fun. I'll finish this later." With that, she turned to leave, pushing her cart toward the nearest exit. Jason, however, wasn't satisfied. He stepped forward, blocking her way. "Hold on," he said, his smirk fading into a sneer. "Don't act like you're too good to talk to us." Elena stopped again, her patience wearing thin. She looked at him, then at his friends, who stood, silently watching the scene unfold. For a split second, she considered calling security. But deep down, she knew it wouldn't make a difference. People like Jason always found ways to justify their actions, twisting the truth, until they came out looking like victims. No, involving authorities would only complicate things further. Instead, she chose her words carefully. "I'm not acting like anything," she replied, her voice firm but controlled. "I'm just trying to do my job. If you'll excuse me." Before she could finish, Jason reached out and grabbed the mop from her hands. He held it up triumphantly, laughing as if he'd won some sort of prize. "See? Now that wasn't so hard, was it?" Elena stared at him, her jaw tightening ever so slightly. Inside, a storm brewed, a mix of anger, frustration, and a flicker of nostalgia, for a time when such behavior would have been met with swift retribution. But she forced herself to remain calm. After all, she wasn't that person anymore. At least that's what she kept telling herself. "Give it back," she said evenly, holding out her hand. Jason pretended to consider her request, tapping the mop against his palm. I don't know. What do you think, guys? Should we give it back?" His friends laughed, feeding into his bravado. Megan even clapped sarcastically as though applauding his cleverness. Meanwhile, Elena stood motionless, her fingers curling into fists at her sides. Every instinct screamed at her to act, to put an end to this nonsense once and for all. Yet she resisted, clinging to the fragile peace she'd built over the years. Finally, Jason tossed the mop aside, letting it clatter noisily to the floor. "There you go," he said mockingly. "Happy now?" Elena didn't answer. She bent down to retrieve the mop, her movements deliberate and unhurried. As she straightened up, she glanced at each of them in turn, committing their faces to memory. Then, without another word, she resumed her work, pretending they weren't there. For a moment, Jason seemed unsure of what to do next. His friends exchanged uncertain glances, sensing that something had shifted. But pride quickly took over, prompting him to call out one last insult before turning to leave. "Whatever," he muttered. "Crazy lady." As they walked away, their laughter echoing down the hallway, Elena allowed herself a small sigh of relief. The encounter was over, for now. But deep down, she knew it wouldn't be the last. Something told her that Jason and his crew weren't the type to let things go easily. And when they returned, she might not be able to hold back. Little did they know. The quiet janitor they'd chosen to torment was far more dangerous than they could possibly imagine. The next evening, Elena Carter returned to her usual routine at Ridgewood Community College. She pushed her cleaning cart down the same hallways she had cleaned the night before, her movements calm and deliberate. Though she tried to focus on her work, her mind kept replaying the encounter with Jason and his friends. Their mocking voices echoed in her memory, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't done with her yet. Elena wasn't one to dwell on problems, but something about Jason's arrogance unsettled her. It wasn't just his words, it was the way he carried himself, as though he believed he was untouchable. She had seen that kind of confidence before, in fighters who thought they were invincible until someone proved them wrong. The thought made her pause briefly, her mop hovering midair. She shook her head, forcing herself to concentrate. That part of her life was over, and she refused to let anyone drag her back into it. Unbeknownst to Elena, Jason Cole and his friends were already planning their next move. Earlier that day, they had gathered in the student lounge, laughing about the previous night's antics. Jason recounted the story with exaggerated flair, painting himself as the hero of the situation. "You should have seen her face when I grabbed the mop," he said, grinning. "She didn't know what to do." Ryan chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Yeah, she totally froze. Probably too scared to say anything." Megan rolled her eyes, flipping her blonde hair over her shoulder. "I don't get why we even bother with her. She's just a janitor." "Exactly," Jason replied, his tone smug. "That's why it's fun. People like her think they're better than us just because they work hard or whatever, but we showed her who's really in charge." Chloe, sitting quietly beside Megan, glanced at her phone. "Do you think she'll report us? I mean, we did kind of mess with her." Jason waved off her concern. "Relax, she won't say anything. People like her don't cause trouble. They just keep their heads down and do their jobs." His confidence reassured the group, and soon they were brainstorming ways to escalate their prank. Ryan suggested hiding her cleaning supplies, while Megan proposed leaving fake complaints with the administration. But Jason had a bolder idea. "Why stop there?" he asked, leaning forward. "Let's go after her again tonight. Same place, same time. Maybe this time she'll actually fight back, or at least try to." His friends laughed, thrilled by the prospect of another round of entertainment. None of them considered the possibility that Elena might not be as harmless as she seemed. To them, she was just an ordinary woman, easy to intimidate and even easier to dismiss. As the clock struck 10, the group made their way to the gymnasium hallway, where they had confronted Elena the previous night. Sure enough, she was there, mopping the floor with the same quiet determination. Jason signaled for the others to hang back while he approached her alone. He wanted to catch her off guard, to see if she would react differently this time. "Hey, mop lady," he called out, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Remember us?" Elena stopped what she was doing and turned to face him. Her expression remained neutral, betraying no hint of emotion. "Is there something you need?" she asked, her voice steady. Jason smirked, clearly pleased with her response. "Nah, just came to check on you, make sure you're okay after last night." "I'm fine," Elena replied simply. "If that's all, I'd like to get back to work." "Oh, come on," Jason said, stepping closer. "Don't be so serious, we're just having a little fun." Elena took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay calm. She had dealt with worse than this in her past, but she didn't want to risk losing control. Not here, not now. "Your idea of fun isn't very amusing," she said evenly. "If you don't mind, I'd appreciate it if you left me alone." Jason raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. "Wow, look who's getting brave all of a sudden. What happened to the scared little janitor from last night?" "I wasn't scared," Elena corrected him, her tone firmer this time. "I just didn't feel like wasting my time arguing with you." Her words caught Jason off guard, and for a moment he faltered. But then he recovered, his smirk returning. "Well, maybe you should have argued. Could have been interesting." Before Elena could respond, Ryan and the others joined them, forming a loose circle around her. Megan crossed her arms, glaring at the janitor. "You've got some nerve talking to Jason like that," she snapped. "Who do you think you are?" Elena glanced at each of them, her patience wearing thin. "I'm just trying to do my job," she said, keeping her voice level. "If you have a problem with that, take it up with someone else." Chloe, who had been unusually quiet, spoke up hesitantly. "Maybe we should leave her alone. This doesn't seem worth it." "Shut up, Chloe," Jason shot back, annoyed by her suggestion. "We're not going anywhere until she learns her place." Elena sighed inwardly, realizing that reasoning with them was pointless. They weren't interested in listening. They only wanted to assert their dominance. Still, she refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her upset. Instead, she focused on maintaining her composure, even as her instincts screamed at her to act. Jason, growing impatient, decided to push further. He stepped closer, invading her personal space. "You hear that?" he taunted. "You'd better start showing us some respect, or things could get ugly." For the first time, Elena's mask slipped. A flicker of anger flashed in her eyes, though she quickly masked it with indifference. "Respect is earned," she said coolly. "And based on your behavior, you haven't earned mine." Her response infuriated Jason. He reached out, grabbing her arm roughly. "Listen, lady." In an instant, everything changed. Elena reacted faster than anyone expected, twisting her arm free and stepping back. Her movements were fluid and precise, honed by years of training. Jason stumbled forward, momentarily off balance as his friends stared in shock. "What the hell?" Ryan exclaimed, taking a step back. Elena didn't answer. She stood tall, her posture defensive but controlled. "I warned you," she said softly, her voice carrying a note of finality. "Don't touch me again." Jason recovered quickly, his face flushed with embarrassment and rage. "Oh, so you do have some fight in you," he sneered. "This should be interesting." He lunged toward her, but Elena sidestepped him effortlessly, using his momentum against him. With a quick motion, she swept her foot behind his legs, sending him crashing to the floor. The sound of his fall echoed through the hallway, drawing gasps from Megan and Chloe. Ryan rushed forward, trying to grab Elena from behind, but she spun around, delivering a sharp elbow strike to his stomach. He doubled over, wheezing, as Jason scrambled to his feet, his expression livid. "You're gonna regret that," he growled, charging at her once more. But Elena was ready. Years of combat experience kicked in as she dodged his attack, countering with a series of calculated moves. Each strike was efficient, designed to incapacitate rather than harm. Within moments, Jason and his friends lay sprawled on the floor, bruised and humiliated. Breathing heavily, Elena straightened her uniform and looked down at them. "Next time," she said coldly, "think twice before picking on someone you don't know." With that, she picked up her mop and walked away, leaving the group staring after her in stunned silence. For the first time in years, Elena felt a sense of vindication, but also unease. She knew this wasn't the end. Word of what had happened would spread, and her quiet life at Ridgewood Community College would never be the same again. The next morning, whispers filled the hallways of Ridgewood Community College. By the time classes started, nearly everyone had heard about what happened the night before. Some students claimed they saw security footage of the fight, describing how Elena Carter, a janitor who rarely spoke to anyone, had single-handedly taken down Jason Cole and his friends. Others exaggerated the story, saying she flipped tables, broke broomsticks, or even threw someone into a wall. No one knew exactly what had happened, but one thing was clear. The quiet janitor wasn't as ordinary as people thought. Jason, Ryan, Megan, and Chloe were conspicuously absent from their usual spots around campus. Rumors circulated that they hadn't shown up for their morning classes, and when someone spotted them later in the day, it was obvious why. Jason walked with a slight limp, his face bruised and swollen. Ryan winced every time he moved his arm, while Megan and Chloe avoided eye contact with anyone who tried to ask questions. They looked defeated, humiliated, and desperate to avoid attention. For Elena, the aftermath of the fight brought both relief and unease. She arrived at work that evening as usual, pushing her cleaning cart through the empty hallways. Despite the rumors swirling around campus, she didn't expect much to change. After all, she had only defended herself. But as she began mopping near the gymnasium, she noticed something unusual. Small groups of students lingered nearby, watching her curiously. Some whispered to each other, pointing discreetly in her direction. Others approached her hesitantly, asking if the stories were true. "Did you really take on Jason and his crew?" one student asked, wide-eyed. Elena stopped mopping and turned to face him. "I don't know what you've heard," she said calmly, "but I did what I had to do." Her answer seemed to satisfy the student, who nodded respectfully before walking away. More followed, each wanting to confirm the rumors for themselves. To Elena's surprise, many of them thanked her. A few admitted they had been bullied by Jason's group in the past and expressed admiration for how she stood up to them. One girl even hugged her, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she whispered. You have no idea how much this means. Elena didn't know how to respond. She had always preferred to stay out of the spotlight, but now she found herself at the center of it. The attention made her uncomfortable, but there was also a sense of satisfaction. For years, she had kept her past hidden, believing it was best left buried. Now she realized that maybe it could serve a purpose, not to intimidate or hurt others, but to protect those who couldn't defend themselves. Word of the incident eventually reached Dean Roberts, the head administrator of the college. He called Elena into his office the following afternoon, his expression stern but curious. Sitting behind his desk, he folded his hands and studied her carefully. Ms. Carter, he began, I understand there was an altercation last night involving you and several students. Elena nodded, meeting his gaze without flinching. Yes, sir, it's true. Dean Roberts leaned back in his chair, clearly unsure of how to proceed. I've reviewed the security footage, he said slowly. From what I can see, the students initiated the confrontation. Is that correct? It is, Elena replied simply. They cornered me and became aggressive. I acted in self-defense. The dean frowned, tapping his pen against the desk. While I appreciate your honesty, Ms. Carter, the extent of your retaliation raises some concerns. You seem unusually skilled. Elena hesitated, knowing she couldn't reveal too much. I've had training in the past, she admitted, vaguely. But I assure you my actions were necessary. Dean Roberts sighed, rubbing his temples. This situation is complicated. On one hand, the student's behavior was unacceptable. On the other hand, your response was extreme. I need to consider how to handle this appropriately. Elena remained silent, letting him think. She understood his dilemma. From an outsider's perspective, her actions might seem excessive, but she also knew that Jason and his friends wouldn't have stopped until someone put them in their place. If anything, she had done the college a favor. After a long pause, the dean spoke again. For now, I'll speak with the students involved and issue formal warnings. As for you, he paused, studying her once more. I won't take disciplinary action, but I expect you to maintain professionalism moving forward. Understood? Yes, sir, Elena said, nodding. Thank you. As she left the office, Elena felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The meeting could have gone worse, and she was grateful the dean had chosen not to press further about her past. Still, she knew the situation wasn't resolved. Jason and his friends weren't likely to let things go quietly, and their reputations were already suffering. Students openly mocked them in the hallways, calling them cowards and losers. Even professors seemed less tolerant of their antics, assigning stricter penalties for missed assignments or disruptive behavior. For Jason, the fallout was unbearable. Once proud and confident, he now walked with his head down, avoiding eye contact with anyone who passed him. His friends stuck close, offering hollow reassurances, but their loyalty was wavering. Megan and Chloe barely spoke to him anymore, blaming him for dragging them into the mess. Ryan, still nursing his injuries, muttered under his breath about revenge, but Jason knew better than to try anything. Not after what happened last time. Despite everything, Jason refused to admit defeat. He convinced himself that Elena had gotten lucky, that her victory was a fluke. Deep down, he feared her speed, her precision, her unshakable calm. But he couldn't bring himself to acknowledge it. Instead, he focused on finding ways to regain control. Late one night, he gathered his remaining allies in the parking lot outside the gymnasium, determined to plot their next move. We can't just let her get away with this, Jason said, pacing back and forth. She made us look like fools. Ryan nodded, wincing as he adjusted his sore arm. Yeah, but what are we supposed to do? She's stronger than all of us combined. Megan crossed her arms, glaring at the ground. Maybe we should go to the police, tell them she attacked us. Chloe shook her head immediately. That won't work. Everyone knows you guys started it. Besides, the security cameras prove it. Jason clenched his fists, frustrated by their lack of ideas. There has to be something we can do, he muttered. Something that'll make her pay. An awkward silence fell over the group as they struggled to come up with a plan. None of them wanted to confront Elena directly, not after what she had done, but they couldn't stand the thought of doing nothing either. Their pride demanded retribution, even if it meant risking another humiliating defeat. Unbeknownst to them, Elena was aware of their growing desperation. She had seen the way they watched her from afar, whispering urgently whenever she passed by. Though she didn't fear them, she knew they wouldn't give up easily. People like Jason thrived on power and control, and losing to someone like her was a blow to their egos they couldn't ignore. One evening, as Elena cleaned the library, she overheard two students talking about Jason's group. "I heard they're planning something big," one of them said, "something to embarrass her in front of everyone." The other student laughed nervously. "Good luck with that. Have you seen what she can do?" Their conversation confirmed Elena's suspicions. Jason and his friends weren't finished yet, and whatever they planned next would likely involve public humiliation. She considered reporting them to the administration, but she doubted it would stop them. They were too determined, too blinded by anger and shame to listen to reason. Instead, Elena decided to prepare herself. She spent her free time practicing old techniques she hadn't used in years, honing her reflexes and sharpening her focus. Though she hoped it wouldn't come to another confrontation, she knew better than to leave anything to chance. If Jason and his crew wanted a fight, she would be ready. By the end of the week, tensions on campus had reached a breaking point. Students split into factions, some supporting Elena and others siding with Jason's group. Arguments erupted in classrooms and cafeterias, turning what should have been a peaceful learning environment into a battleground of opinions. Faculty members tried to mediate, reminding everyone that violence and hostility had no place at Ridgewood Community College. But their efforts did little to ease the tension. Through it all, Elena remained calm and composed. She continued her work as usual, ignoring the stares and whispers that followed her wherever she went. Though she disliked being the center of attention, she recognized that her actions had sparked a larger conversation about bullying and accountability. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel a sense of purpose, a reminder that even the quietest voices could make a difference. Still, she knew the storm wasn't over. Somewhere in the shadows, Jason and his friends were plotting their next move. And when it came, Elena would be waiting. The tension at Ridgewood Community College continued to simmer, growing thicker with each passing day. Students whispered about what might happen next, dividing themselves into two camps. Some admired Elena Carter for standing up to Jason Cole and his friends, while others sided with the bullies, claiming she had gone too far. The divide created an uneasy atmosphere on campus, where even simple conversations seemed charged with unspoken hostility. Jason and his group were quieter than usual, keeping to themselves and avoiding large crowds. They spent their free time, huddled together in secluded corners of the library or empty classrooms, plotting their revenge. Jason refused to let go of his anger. Every time he passed Elena in the hallways, he felt a surge of humiliation that fueled his determination to make her pay. He couldn't understand how someone like her, a janitor, had managed to humiliate him so completely. It didn't matter that he and his friends had started the fight. All he cared about was restoring his pride. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jason gathered Ryan, Megan, and Chloe in the parking lot behind the gymnasium. This time, they came prepared. Jason held a rolled-up poster under his arm, its edges taped neatly to keep it secure. His lips curled into a smug grin as he explained his plan. "This is going to destroy her," he said confidently. "No one will respect her after tonight." Ryan frowned, glancing at the poster skeptically. "What's on it?" Jason unrolled it slightly, revealing a crude caricature of Elena dressed in ragged clothes, holding a mop like a weapon. Beneath the drawing were bold letters spelling out the words, "Meet Ridgewood's real janitor, a violent psycho." Megan snickered nervously while Chloe shifted uncomfortably. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" Chloe asked hesitantly. "What if people find out we did this?" "They won't," Jason snapped. "We'll hang it up late tonight when no one's around. By morning, everyone will see it." and they'll know exactly who to blame. His confidence reassured the others, though none of them looked entirely convinced. Still, they nodded along, unwilling to challenge him. After all, they had followed him this far. Turning back now would mean admitting defeat. Meanwhile, Elena continued her routine, unaware of the storm brewing around her. She worked late into the night, cleaning classrooms and hallways with the same quiet dedication she always showed. Though the recent events weighed on her mind, she refused to let them distract her from her duties. If anything, she found solace in the rhythm of her work, the steady swish of her mop, the clink of bottles in her cart, the soft hum of the building settling into silence. As midnight approached, Elena finished her rounds and headed toward the supply closet to store her equipment. The hallway was dimly lit, the only sound the faint buzzing of fluorescent lights overhead. She moved quickly, eager to leave the empty campus behind and return home. But as she turned a corner near the cafeteria, something caught her eye. A large poster hung prominently on the wall, illuminated by the glow of nearby emergency lights. At first glance, it looked like any other announcement, a flyer advertising an upcoming event or club meeting. But as Elena drew closer, her stomach sank. It was the caricature Jason had described, mocking her appearance and labeling her a violent psycho. Beneath the drawing, someone had scrawled additional insults in bold marker, "Stay away from students," and "She doesn't belong here." Elena stared at the poster, her jaw tightening ever so slightly. For a moment she considered tearing it down and walking away. But then she noticed something else. Small groups of students lingering nearby, whispering among themselves. Some pointed at the poster, laughing nervously, while others glanced at her with pity or curiosity. No one approached her directly, but their presence made it clear. Word had already spread. Instead of reacting immediately, Elena took a deep breath and stepped back. She reminded herself that this wasn't about her. It was about Jason and his need to lash out. Destroying the poster wouldn't change that. What mattered was how she responded. With deliberate calm, she retrieved her phone from her pocket and snapped a photo of the poster. Then, without saying a word, she tore it down and placed it in her cart. By morning, the entire campus knew about the poster. Social media buzzed, with screenshots and comments, some defending Elena and others siding with Jason's group. The administration acted swiftly, issuing a statement condemning the act as harassment and promising to investigate. Dean Roberts called Elena into his office again, his expression grim. "I'm sorry this happened," he said sincerely. "You don't deserve to be treated this way." Elena nodded, grateful for his support. "Thank you, sir. I just want to focus on my work." The dean promised to address the issue publicly during an upcoming assembly, but Elena knew the damage had already been done. The poster had succeeded in stirring up controversy, forcing her into the spotlight once more. Some students rallied around her, offering kind words and gestures of solidarity. Others, however, remained skeptical, questioning whether she truly posed a threat. Jason watched it all unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and frustration. While the poster had drawn attention, it hadn't achieved the outcome he'd hoped for. Instead of turning people against Elena, it had sparked a debate about bullying and accountability. Many students criticized him and his friends for their actions, accusing them of cowardice and cruelty. Even faculty members began treating them with thinly veiled disdain, assigning stricter penalties for minor infractions and refusing to tolerate excuses. For Jason, the backlash was unbearable. He felt trapped, unable to escape the consequences of his choices. His grades slipped, his friendships fractured, and his reputation crumbled. Yet instead of reflecting on his behavior, he doubled down, blaming Elena for everything. In his mind, she was the reason his life had fallen apart, and he wasn't going to let her win. Late one night, Jason devised a final plan. He convinced Ryan, Megan, and Chloe to join him in ambushing Elena during her shift. "We'll catch her off guard," he said, pacing back and forth. "Surround her, make her look weak. Everyone will see she's not as tough as they think." Megan hesitated, biting her lip. "What if she fights back? She already beat us once." She won't, Jason insisted. Not if we're smarter. This time, we'll use numbers to our advantage. Though none of them felt confident about the plan, they agreed to go along with it. Together, they waited in the shadows near the science wing, where Elena often cleaned late at night. When she finally appeared pushing her cart down the hallway, Jason signaled for the others to move into position. "Hey, Janitor," Jason called out, stepping into the light. His voice dripped with mockery. "Remember us?" Elena stopped mid-mop, her expression unreadable. "Is there something you need?" she asked calmly, as though she hadn't noticed the others closing in around her. Jason smirked, gesturing for his friends to form a loose circle. "Yeah, actually, we've got a message for you." Elena scanned their faces, her eyes narrowing slightly. She recognized the setup immediately, a repeat of their earlier attempts to intimidate her. But this time she wasn't interested in playing their game. "If you have something to say, say it," she replied evenly. "Otherwise, I'd like to get back to work." Her composure infuriated Jason. "You really think you're better than us, don't you?" he spat, acting all high and mighty like you're some kind of hero. "I'm not trying to be a hero," Elena said firmly. "I'm just doing my job, something you should try doing for once." Her words struck a nerve. Jason lunged forward, grabbing her arm roughly. "Don't talk to me like that." In an instant, Elena reacted. She twisted free of his grip, spinning around to face him. Her movements were precise, calculated, and impossible to predict. Before Jason could recover, she delivered a swift kick to his knee, sending him stumbling backward. Ryan rushed forward to help, but Elena sidestepped him effortlessly, using his momentum to send him crashing into Megan and Chloe. Within moments, the group lay sprawled on the floor, gasping for air and clutching their injuries. Jason struggled to stand, his face red with rage and embarrassment. You can't do this," he stammered. "You'll regret it." Elena straightened her uniform, her expression cold and unyielding. "I gave you a chance to leave me alone," she said softly. "You chose not to listen." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Jason and his friends staring after her in stunned silence. Word of the second confrontation spread quickly, cementing Elena's reputation as someone not to be underestimated. For many students, it was a wake-up call, a reminder that bullying had consequences, and those who sought to harm others often ended up hurting themselves instead. As for Jason, the defeat shattered what little remained of his pride. Unable to face the ridicule and judgment of his peers, he and his friends eventually transferred to another school, disappearing from Ridgewood Community College altogether. Their departure brought a sense of relief to the campus, allowing life to slowly return to normal. For Elena, the experience marked a turning point. Though she still preferred solitude, she found herself opening up to those who reached out to thank her. Some students invited her to join them for coffee or lunch, while others asked for advice on dealing with difficult situations. Through these interactions, Elena discovered a new purpose, one rooted in teaching others to stand up for themselves and protect those who couldn't. The weeks that followed the second confrontation between Elena Carter and Jason Cole's group brought a noticeable shift in the atmosphere at Ridgewood Community College. The once tense hallways began to feel lighter, as though a weight had been lifted. Students moved freely again, their conversations no longer tinged with whispers about bullies or revenge. For many, it felt like the campus had turned a corner, a chance to start fresh and leave behind the drama that had consumed them for so long. Jason, Ryan, Megan, and Chloe were nowhere to be seen. Rumors circulated that they had transferred to another school, unable to handle the backlash from their actions. Some students celebrated their departure, calling it karma for what they had done. Others felt a pang of sympathy, wondering if perhaps they deserved a second chance. But one thing was certain: without their presence looming over the campus, life became quieter and safer. Elena, however, remained largely unchanged. She continued her nightly routine, cleaning the same hallway she always had, pushing her cart with steady hands. Though the attention surrounding her had died down, she still noticed small signs of gratitude from those around her. A student, might hold open a door for her as she wheeled her supplies through. Another would smile warmly and say thank you when passing by. These gestures weren't grand or dramatic, but they meant something to Elena. They reminded her that even in a place where she had chosen to remain invisible, her actions had made a difference. Still, Elena couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. She had spent years running from her past, burying the skills and experiences that had defined her younger self. Yet here she was, forced to confront pieces of that life she thought she'd left behind. At first, she worried it would unravel everything she had built, her quiet job, her peaceful existence. But instead, something unexpected had occurred. People didn't see her as dangerous or intimidating. They saw her as someone who stood up for what was right. And for the first time in a long time, Elena felt proud of who she was. One evening, as she cleaned the library, a young woman approached her hesitantly. Her name was Lily Harper, a freshman majoring in psychology. Elena recognized her immediately. Lily had been one of the few students brave enough to speak out against Jason and his friends during the height of the tension. Now standing before Elena, she looked nervous but determined. "Hi, Ms. Carter," Lily began, clutching a notebook to her chest. "I hope I'm not bothering you." Elena paused mid-mop and gave her a small smile. "Not at all. What can I do for you?" Lily hesitated, glancing around as though searching for the right words. I wanted to thank you for everything you did. You didn't have to stand up to them, but you did. And it made me realize that we shouldn't let people push us around." Elena nodded slowly, understanding the weight of what Lily was saying. "It's important to stand up for yourself," she replied gently. "But it's also okay to ask for help when you need it." "That's actually why I came to talk to you," Lily admitted. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and I realized how much courage it takes to face someone like that. I want to learn how to protect myself, not because I think I'll ever get into a fight, but because I want to feel confident. Do you think maybe you could teach me? Or at least give me some advice?" Elena blinked in surprise. Teaching self-defense wasn't something she had considered, especially not after vowing to leave her violent past behind. But as she looked at Lily's earnest expression, she found herself reconsidering. Maybe there was a way to use her skills for good, to empower others rather than harm them. "I'm not a teacher," Elena said finally, choosing her words carefully. "But if you're serious about learning, I can share some basics. It's not about fighting, it's about being prepared." Lily's face lit up with relief. "That would mean so much to me. Thank you." Over the next few weeks, Elena began meeting with Lily in an empty classroom after her shift ended. At first, their sessions were simple: basic stances, how to identify potential threats, and techniques for de-escalating tense situations. But as Lily grew more comfortable, Elena introduced practical exercises: how to break free from grabs, deliver effective strikes, and use an opponent's momentum against them. Each lesson was grounded in discipline and respect, principles Elena had learned long ago and never forgotten. Word of these lessons spread among the students, and soon others began asking if they could join. Elena hesitated at first, unsure if she was ready to take on more responsibility. But the sincerity in their requests touched her. Many of them were young women who had experienced bullying or harassment in the past and wanted tools to defend themselves. Seeing their determination, Elena agreed to expand the sessions, turning them into informal workshops held twice a week. The workshops became a safe space for participants to learn and grow. Elena emphasized that self-defense wasn't just physical, it was mental and emotional too. She encouraged the students to trust their instincts, set boundaries, and speak up when something didn't feel right. Her calm demeanor and patient teaching style earned her respect and admiration, transforming her from a quiet janitor into a mentor and role model. For Elena, the experience was both challenging and rewarding. On one hand, it required her to revisit skills and memories she had tried to forget. On the other hand, it gave her a renewed sense of purpose. Watching the students gain confidence reminded her of why she had started training in the first place, not to hurt others, but to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. As the semester progressed, life at Ridgewood Community College settled into a new rhythm. The administration worked to address issues of bullying and harassment more proactively, implementing stricter policies and encouraging open dialogue. Faculty members praised Elena's efforts, crediting her with inspiring, positive change on campus. Even Dean Roberts acknowledged her contributions during a faculty meeting, thanking her for stepping up in ways no one had expected. Despite the recognition, Elena remained humble. She didn't seek praise or attention. She simply wanted to make a difference. And in doing so, she discovered something profound. Helping others heal was its own kind of redemption. One night, after wrapping up a particularly successful workshop, Elena stayed behind to clean the classroom. As she wiped down the desks and swept the floor, she reflected on how far she had come. The scars of her past hadn't disappeared. They likely never would, but they no longer controlled her. Instead, she had found a way to channel her experiences into something meaningful. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Turning, she saw Lily standing there holding a cup of coffee. "I brought you this," Lily said shyly, "to say thank you for everything." Elena smiled, taking the cup gratefully. "You don't have to thank me," she said softly. "Seeing you all grow is thanks enough." Lily hesitated, then asked tentatively, "Do you ever miss it? The life you used to have?" Elena paused, considering the question. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But I've learned that every part of my past has shaped who I am today, and right now I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Lily nodded, seeming satisfied with the answer. After exchanging a few more words, she left Elena alone in the quiet classroom. As Elena finished cleaning, she glanced out the window at the darkened campus. The moon hung low in the sky, casting soft shadows across the grounds. For the first time in years, she felt at peace, not because she had erased her past, but because she had embraced it. As the months passed, Ridgewood Community College continued to transform. The changes weren't flashy or dramatic. They were subtle, like the first signs of spring after a long winter. Students walked the hallways with their heads held higher, less afraid to speak up when something felt wrong. Conversations about bullying and respect became normal, not taboo. Even professors noticed a shift in classroom dynamics. Students who once hesitated to participate now raised their hands confidently, unafraid to share their thoughts. Elena Carter remained at the heart of this transformation, though she never sought recognition for it. Her self-defense workshops grew in popularity, drawing participants from all corners of the campus. What had started as informal lessons with Lily Harper had blossomed into a thriving community initiative. Elena worked closely with the administration to formalize the program, creating structured sessions that combined physical techniques with discussions about mental strength and assertiveness. The workshops were open to anyone, but they particularly resonated with young women who wanted tools to navigate a world that often underestimated them. For many of the participants, the workshops were more than just learning how to throw a punch or break free from a grip. They were about empowerment, about finding confidence in themselves and trusting their ability to handle difficult situations. Elena's calm demeanor and patient teaching style made her an ideal mentor. She didn't push anyone beyond their limits. Instead, she encouraged them to grow at their own pace. Her mantra was simple: strength isn't about overpowering someone else. It's about knowing your worth. Among the students who benefited most was Lily Harper. Once shy and unsure of herself, Lily had blossomed under Elena's guidance. She no longer flinched at loud voices or avoided eye contact in uncomfortable conversations. Instead, she stood tall, speaking her mind without hesitation. Her grades improved, her friendships deepened, and she even joined the student council, where she advocated for policies to support victims of bullying. When asked about her transformation, Lily always credited Elena. "She taught me how to believe in myself," Lily would say, "and that changed everything." Elena's influence extended beyond the workshops. As news of her efforts spread, local organizations began reaching out, asking if she would partner with them to expand her work. A nearby community center invited her to lead similar programs for teenagers and young adults in the area. At first, Elena hesitated, worried about taking on too much. But when she saw the impact her teachings had on those outside the college, she realized she couldn't turn away. Slowly, she began volunteering one evening a week at the center, sharing her skills with a broader audience. Her dual roles, as a janitor by night and a mentor by choice, kept her busy. But Elena didn't mind. For years, she had lived quietly, keeping to herself and avoiding attention. Now she found joy in connecting with others, in helping them discover their own strength. It wasn't always easy. There were moments when memories of her past threatened to resurface, reminding her of the violence she had left behind, but she pushed through. Every time she saw a student smile or heard someone say thank you, she knew it was worth it. Despite her growing responsibilities, Elena refused to give up her job at the college. To her, cleaning was more than just a paycheck. It was a way to stay grounded, to remind herself of the person she had chosen to become. Some of her coworkers joked that she was overqualified for the position, given her newfound fame, but Elena simply laughed it off. "A mop doesn't care about titles," she would say. "It just gets the job done." The administration appreciated her dedication, often praising her contributions during meetings. Dean Roberts even offered her a part-time role as a campus safety advisor, working alongside faculty to address issues of harassment and conflict resolution. Elena accepted the position on one condition: she wouldn't stop cleaning. "I'm happiest when I'm doing both," she explained. "One keeps me connected to the students, and the other reminds me why I'm here." Jason Cole and his friends were rarely mentioned anymore. Their names faded into obscurity, replaced by stories of resilience and growth. Some students wondered what had happened to them after they transferred, but most agreed it didn't matter. What mattered was the legacy they had inadvertently created, a catalyst for change that rippled through the entire campus. One evening, as Elena finished her shift and prepared to leave, she noticed a familiar figure waiting near the entrance. It was Lily, holding a small box wrapped in brown paper. "I wanted to give you this," Lily said, handing it to her. "It's nothing big, but I wanted to say thank you. Again." Curious, Elena unwrapped the box to find a handmade bracelet. Inside, it was simple yet beautiful, crafted from braided leather and small beads engraved with words like strength, courage, and hope. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at it. "Lily, this is incredible," she said, softly. "Thank you." "It's not much," Lily replied, blushing, "but I thought it might remind you of everything you've done, for me, for everyone here." Elena slipped the bracelet onto her wrist, feeling its weight settle comfortably against her skin. "It's perfect," she said, smiling warmly. "I'll treasure it." As Lily walked away, Elena lingered for a moment, staring at the bracelet. It was a symbol of everything she had worked for, a reminder that even the smallest actions could create waves of change. She thought back to the woman she used to be, the fighter known as the Wraith, feared and respected in equal measure. That version of herself seemed like a distant memory now, almost like a character in someone else's story. And yet, pieces of her still remained, woven into the fabric of the life she had built. Outside, the air was cool and crisp, carrying the scent of autumn leaves. Elena pulled her jacket tighter around her and began walking toward the parking lot. The campus was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. As she reached her car, she paused, glancing back at the building one last time. Somewhere inside, a group of students was practicing techniques she had taught them, laughing and cheering each other on. Their voices carried faintly through the windows, filling the night with warmth and hope. Elena smiled to herself, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Life wasn't perfect. There were still challenges ahead, both for her and for the people she cared about. But she had learned to face them head on. She had discovered that strength wasn't about hiding from the past or pretending it didn't exist. It was about embracing it, using it to build something better. Climbing into her car, Elena turned the key in the ignition and drove off into the night. The road ahead was uncertain, but she wasn't afraid. Whatever came next, she knew she wouldn't face it alone. She had a community behind her, a purpose guiding her, and a future worth fighting for.